Amarachi stood in the middle of the crowded market in Onitsha, holding 2 heavy bags of food. The sun was hot, and people moved quickly, shouting prices and selling their goods. She had just finished buying everything on Obi's list: rice, tomatoes, fish. But when he checked the rice, his face changed. It wasn't the brand he liked. Without warning, his hand flew across her face. The loud slap echoed through the market. Her cheek burned. People turned to look. Some gasped. Others just stood and stared. No one said a word. It was as if the busy market had paused just to watch her shame. Amarachi didn't cry. She couldn't. Her eyes stayed dry, but inside, something broke. Not just because of the pain, but because of the silence, the way everyone looked at her, like she was small, like she had no worth. A woman beside her shook her head sadly. A man muttered, "No family matter." Obi grabbed the rice from her hand and walked away, leaving her standing there, alone. Her hands shook. Her heart was loud in her chest. She bent down slowly, picked up the rest of the food, and began to walk. Each step felt heavier than the bags she carried. She didn't understand how love had turned into this, into shame, into fear. But even in that moment, as whispers followed her, Amarachi didn't break. Something deep inside her whispered back, "Not forever." Amarachi walked home with slow, heavy steps. The market scene still played in her mind. The slap, the silence, the stares. She felt every eye burning into her back as she left. People whispered as she passed. Some shook their heads in pity. Others looked at her with judgment, as if she had done something wrong. She could hear bits and pieces of their words. "Nawa-o, what did she do? Maybe she talks too much. She should just behave." Their voices followed her like shadows. She didn't say a word. She just kept walking, carrying the bags, holding back the tears that kept rising but never fell. Her face was still sore, but it was her heart that ached the most. Not just because Obi had slapped her, but because no one stood up for her. Not one person said, "This is wrong." They all just watched like it was normal. When she got home, she met her mother sitting outside, peeling yam. Amarachi hoped for a hug, a kind word, anything. But her mother barely looked up. When Amarachi finally told her what happened, her mother sighed deeply and said, "Endure, my daughter. Marriage is not easy. You're not the first." Her words felt like another slap. Amarachi wanted to scream. She wanted to ask, "Is this the life you want for me? Is pain part of love?" But she stayed quiet. That night, the house was silent except for the ticking wall clock and the distant sound of a generator humming outside. Obi was asleep, snoring as if nothing had happened. Amarachi lay on her back, staring at the cracked ceiling. Her mind refused to rest. Her thoughts spun in circles. She remembered being a girl, dreaming of a big life, of love, respect, happiness. Now she was a woman with bruises, loneliness, and a name that people whispered about. She turned to face the wall and bit her lip to hold in the pain. That was the moment something inside her shifted. She didn't know how, or when, or what she would do. But deep in her soul, a decision was made. She whispered into the darkness, "This won't be my ending." No one heard it but her, but it was real. A tiny spark in a heart full of ashes. The beginning of something stronger than fear. She didn't sleep that night, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel powerless. Weeks passed, but Amarachi didn't forget her silent vow. Life didn't change overnight. Obi was still the same, shouting, complaining, finding fault in everything she did. But Amarachi had changed on the inside. She started watching people more closely, listening, asking quiet questions. She knew she had to do something, anything, to begin her own journey. She just didn't know where to start. One afternoon, while helping at a small church event, Amarachi met a woman named Auntie Chica. She worked with a local NGO that supported women and children. There was something warm in her voice, something that made Amarachi feel safe. After a short conversation, Auntie Chica said, "We're looking for someone to help with paperwork and cleaning around the office. It's part-time and the pay isn't much. But are you interested?" Amarachi's heart jumped. She tried to hide the excitement in her eyes as she nodded quickly. "Yes, Ma, I'm very interested." The job wasn't fancy. It was just a small desk in a small office with old plastic chairs and a noisy fan. But it was hers. Her name was on the staff list. She received a small brown envelope every 2 weeks. For the first time, she earned her own money, even if it was little. She started saving, even if it was just 200 naira at a time. Each coin felt like a seed. Obi didn't like it. He complained that she was neglecting her duties at home, that she was changing. Some nights, he would knock things over or shout because dinner was 5 minutes late. But Amarachi stayed calm. She didn't argue. She just watched him, her silence stronger than his rage. At night, when the lights went out and Obi snored beside her, Amarachi lit a candle and opened old books she had borrowed from the NGO library. Sometimes, she could only read one page before sleep took over, but she kept going. She read about women who built businesses, women who rose from nothing, women who refused to give up. She started writing notes in an old-school notebook she found in the cupboard. Every page she turned gave her more strength. Every new word she learned made her feel more alive. She began to dream again, not just in sleep, but while awake. She dreamed of freedom, of standing tall, of never having to ask for permission to live her life. She didn't know exactly what her future would look like, but now she had something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, quiet, steady, and burning like the candle beside her. The job was small, but the decision was big. She had started climbing, slowly, step by step, and she wasn't going back. The slaps didn't stop. If anything, they came more often now. Obi seemed angrier with each passing day. He would yell over small things. If the soup was too salty, if she came back late from work, if she looked too proud. And when he couldn't control his temper, his hands did the talking. Amarachi's arms and back often carried fresh bruises, hidden under long sleeves and silence, but she never fought back. She didn't scream. She didn't tell anyone, not even her mother. People might have guessed, but no one asked. And Amarachi didn't offer the truth. She just smiled when she had to, lowered her eyes, and kept going. But inside, she was building something. Every slap, every insult, every cruel word became a brick in the wall she was creating between the life she had and the life she wanted. She was still working at the NGO office, still saving quietly. She would hide tiny amounts of money inside an old biscuit tin under her clothes. Every time she opened it, she felt like she was feeding her future. At night, when Obi finally fell asleep, Amarachi would lie in the dark, touching the bruises gently, not with sadness, but with fire. And in a whisper only the walls heard, she would say, "They'll read my name one day." That sentence became her shield, her medicine, her promise. Some mornings, she would look at herself in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes looked tired, her face thinner. But she saw something else too. Strength. A quiet, deep strength growing like roots under the ground. No one could see it, not even Obi, but she felt it. Obi kept trying to crush her. But Amarachi had learned how to bend without breaking. She started walking with purpose, listening to podcasts at the cybercafé, writing small business ideas in the back of her notebook. She watched how people sold things in the market, how they packaged food, how they used their phones to advertise. She wasn't just surviving anymore, and she was preparing. The abuse still hurt, but it no longer controlled her. She had something stronger than fear now, a plan. She knew she couldn't leave yet, not without enough money, not without a clear path. But she also knew she wouldn't stay forever. She was getting ready, and so, every day, she smiled when needed. She cooked, she cleaned, she worked, she saved, she planned. And every time Obi hit her, Amarachi didn't cry. Instead, she closed her eyes and whispered again, "They'll read my name one day," because deep in her soul she believed it, and that belief made her unstoppable. Amarachi had a secret life, one that Obi knew nothing about. While he thought she was going to the market or running errands, she was really going to a small cybercafé in Auka. It was a dusty little place with only 5 working computers and a noisy generator that coughed every few minutes. But to Amarachi, it felt like a doorway to another world. She had heard about free online courses from a woman at the NGO. At first, she was scared. She didn't know much about computers, but the cafe owner, a kind young man named Ibuka, showed her how to log in, how to use email, and how to search for lessons. Slowly, she began learning. She signed up for courses in business development, digital marketing, and social media strategy. She didn't understand everything at first, but she kept showing up, kept watching the videos, kept writing notes in her brown notebook. She borrowed books from anyone who had them. Sometimes, she would offer to help clean someone's house just to borrow a business book for 1 week. She read while cooking, while waiting for water to boil, even while sweeping the floor. She would pause to take notes, then go back to her chores. The kitchen became her classroom, and every quiet moment was a chance to learn something new. At night, she studied in the bathroom, sitting on a small stool with her notebook and a flashlight, because Obi hated to see the candle burning too long. Some nights she was so tired her head would nod off mid-sentence, but she forced herself to stay awake. Her dreams were stronger than her exhaustion. Her bruises still came, her silence still remained, but her mind was growing. She began to understand how businesses attract customers, how to brand a product, how to use social media to sell things. She would look at food sellers on Instagram and study how they took photos, how they wrote captions, how they shared customer reviews. She imagined her own business page one day, clean, professional, full of orders and praise. She never missed a class. Even when she had no transport money, she would walk all the way to the cafe, sometimes under the hot sun or in light rain. She didn't care. Every step was a step closer to freedom. She didn't tell anyone what she was doing, not even her mother. This dream was hers and hers alone, fragile, precious, and still growing. Amarachi knew that if Obi found out, he would try to crush it, so she protected it like a flame in the wind. No one saw what she was building. No one noticed how her eyes started to shine again. But Amarachi knew, and that was enough, because deep down, she wasn't just learning for fun. She was learning for her life, for the day she would rise. Amarachi had been planning for months. Every naira she saved, every idea she wrote down, every lesson she learned at the cybercafé brought her to this moment. The day she finally held 10,000 naira in her hands, it felt like she was holding gold. It wasn't much, but to her, it was the start of everything. She got the money as a small loan from a local women's cooperative. One of the women from the NGO had told her about it. At first, Amarachi was scared to even apply. She thought, what if they laugh at me? What if I fail? But something inside her pushed her forward. She went, filled out the forms, and shared her idea. A small food delivery business called Mamachi's Pots. She chose the name with love. Mamachi was what her late grandmother used to call her, and Pots was a simple reminder of where everything started, her kitchen. With the money, she bought a small gas cooker, 2 large pots, food containers, and ingredients for her first week of cooking. She started small. Jollof rice, egusi soup, moi. She told a few people at the NGO, the cybercafé, and her church. She didn't have money for flyers or ads, so she used her new skills to post pictures and menus on WhatsApp and Facebook. She even created a simple Instagram page. Every morning, while Obi still snored in bed, Amarachi would wake up before 4 a.m. She would quietly sneak into the kitchen and start cooking. By 7 a.m., the food was hot, packed, and ready for delivery. She didn't have a car or a bike, so she walked or used cheap kiki rides to deliver meals herself. She carried coolers, balanced trays, and sometimes even ran to beat lunchtime orders. By afternoon, she would return home, wash dishes, clean up, and get ready to cook again the next day. She still worked her part-time job at the NGO, still kept the house in order, still cooked for Obi, and at night, even with swollen feet and aching back, she would sit with her notebook and plan for tomorrow. Sleep became a luxury, 3 hours, sometimes less. But she didn't complain. Obi noticed something was different. She smiled more. She moved with purpose. He didn't know about the loan, or the business, or the customers who were already praising her food online. She hid it all carefully. Her money, her receipts, her dreams. Some days were hard. Orders were slow. The profit was small. But Amarachi didn't give up. She reminded herself, every big tree started as a seed, and this was her seed, growing quietly, pushing through the dirt. Mamachi's Pots was more than just a business. It was her breath, her voice, her fight. For the first time in years, Amarachi wasn't just surviving, she was building, and no one could stop her now. Amarachi had no idea that one small delivery would change her life forever. That morning was like any other. She had woken up early, cooked a fresh batch of smoky jollof rice with peppered chicken, and delivered it to a new customer who had ordered through Instagram. The woman, young and stylish, smiled warmly when she received the food. "You made this yourself?" she asked. Amarachi nodded shyly. "Yes, ma, everything from scratch." The woman opened the container right there, took a bite, and her eyes lit up. "This is amazing," she said. Amarachi smiled, thanked her, and hurried off to her next stop, unaware that the woman had just recorded a short video. Later that day, while Amarachi was scrubbing pots in the kitchen, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She checked it and saw hundreds of notifications. Her business page was being tagged over and over. Confused, she clicked on one of the links. The customer had posted the video on TikTok. In it, she showed the food, talked about how delicious it was, and shared a bit of Amarachi's story, how she built a food business with just 10,000 naira, how she rose from hardship, and how every bite tasted like hope. The caption read, "From pain to power, Mamachi's Pots deserves the world." The video went viral. In just a few hours, it had thousands of views. By the next morning, it had crossed 1 million. People were commenting things like, "This is the kind of woman we should celebrate, and where can I order from her?" Some shared their own stories. Some just wanted to taste her food. Her follower count shot up. Orders started pouring in, so fast she couldn't keep up. People from all over Orca, and even Lagos, were asking how they could support her. Then came the emails. First, it was a local investor offering to fund her next kitchen space. Then, a food delivery app reached out, wanting to list her officially. A few days later, a popular morning show called and invited her to share her story live. Amarachi sat in the small cybercafé, reading the message over and over. She couldn't believe it. From the same place she once borrowed time on a computer to learn business skills, she was now opening emails from brands who wanted to partner with her. When she finally appeared on TV, she wore a simple dress, did her own makeup, and spoke from her heart. She talked about struggle, shame, survival, and strength. Her voice shook at first, but by the end, the whole studio was clapping. Obi saw it too. He sat in the house, holding the remote, staring at the screen in disbelief as the woman he once beat and belittled became the woman everyone was cheering for. Amarachi wasn't just a local food seller anymore. She had become a symbol, and it all started with one pot, one customer, and one video that told the truth, from pain to power. It had been almost a year since Amarachi last saw Obi. So much had changed. She now wore power suits instead of old wrappers. She spoke on women empowerment panels, stood beside politicians, CEOs, and women who had once hidden their scars like she used to. Her name was in newspapers. Her story was being taught in schools. From Mamachi's Pots, she had built a full catering brand with staff, delivery vans, and even a small training school for young women. Then one rainy afternoon, he showed up. She had just finished giving a speech at a women's business conference in Enugu. The crowd was still clapping when she stepped off stage, heart full and head high. As she walked towards her car, a familiar figure stood near the gate, soaked from the rain, eyes tired, clothes worn. It was Obi. He looked smaller now, not in size, but in spirit. The pride, the anger, the arrogance, all gone. He took a shaky step forward. "Amarachi," he said, his voice low. "Please, can we talk?" She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink, just looked at him calmly, her team standing a few feet behind her. The same man who once slapped her in the market, who called her useless, who tried to break her spirit, was now standing in the rain, asking for a chance. "I lost everything," he whispered. "No job. Nobody wants to help me. I made mistakes. I see that now. I'm sorry. Please, forgive me." For a moment she said nothing. She just looked at him, not with hate, but with something stronger. Power. Peace. She had no more fear in her. No more chains. The woman standing in front of him was not the girl he once controlled. She stepped closer, her heels clicking on the wet pavement. "You slapped a queen," she said, her voice calm and steady, and expected her to crawl. He looked down, ashamed. "I begged you for love," she continued. "I begged you for peace. You gave me bruises and silence. Now you want forgiveness because life slapped you back." "I was wrong," he said softly, eyes wet. "I know," she replied, "but your apology isn't my healing. I healed without it. I rose without you, and I don't need you now." There was no shouting, no drama, just truth, and that truth was louder than any slap he ever gave. She walked away, entered her car, and drove off, not in anger, but in freedom, the kind that comes from knowing who you are and knowing that your past no longer has power over your future. That day, Amarachi didn't just walk away from Obi. She walked into the rest of her life, head high, heart whole, and crown untouched. The night was magical. Bright lights, red carpets, flashing cameras. Lagos had never looked so grand. It was the African Women Rising Gala, one of the biggest nights of the year, where powerful women from across the continent gathered to celebrate strength, resilience, and success. And right there, standing in the middle of it all, was Amarachi. She wore a flowing gold gown that shimmered under the lights. Her hair was styled in soft waves, her face calm but glowing. As she stepped onto the stage, the room went silent, not out of formality, but out of respect. Everyone there knew her story. They had read it in magazines, seen it on TV, and watched it unfold on social media. But now, she was more than a story. She was a movement. The host called her name with pride. Please welcome the winner of the Woman of Courage Award, Amarachi Ume. The applause was thunderous. Amarachi took a deep breath, held the microphone, and began to speak. Her voice was gentle, but it carried across the entire room. A few years ago, she began, I was a woman with nothing but pain in her pocket and silence in her throat. I was told to endure, to bow, to stay quiet. I was slapped in the market for buying the wrong brand of rice. The audience grew still. But today, I stand here not because I fought back with fists, but because I chose not to give up. I chose to dream in secret, to plan in silence, and to build when no one was watching. She paused, letting her words settle in their hearts. There were days I couldn't even afford to feed myself properly. Nights I cried into my pillow, whispering to God, is this all I am? But I kept learning. I kept going. And I told myself, they'll read my name one day. Tears filled many eyes in the audience. Women nodded. Some held hands. I want every woman listening to know, she continued. Your story doesn't end in shame. It doesn't end in silence. Don't just survive. Transform. Let every scar shine like gold. The room erupted in applause. People stood up. Some cheered. Some wept. After the event, reporters surrounded her. Photos were everywhere. Social media exploded with the quote, "Let every scar shine like gold." It trended for days. Schools printed it on banners. NGOs used it in campaigns. Women in shelters held onto it like a lifeline. That night, Amarachi didn't just win an award. She touched millions of lives. She reminded everyone that true power doesn't always come from fame or money. Sometimes it comes from pain, turned into purpose. As she left the stage holding her award tightly, she smiled quietly to herself. Once, she was invisible. Now she was unforgettable. Amarachi's story spread like wildfire. It wasn't just a story anymore. It became a symbol of hope. Across Nigeria and even beyond, people spoke her name with pride. From classrooms in Enugu to boardrooms in Nairobi, her journey was shared as proof that a woman's life doesn't have to end in pain. Schools started inviting her to speak to young girls. They listened with wide eyes as she told them about her struggles, about the night she stared at her ceiling and made a silent promise to never be broken again. She told them, "You are more than your scars. You are your own rescue." Teachers cried, students clapped, and many wrote her letters saying she had changed their lives. NGOs across Africa began to partner with her. They supported her foundation that now trains women in business, tech, and survival skills. She helped women who once hid behind shame to stand tall, speak loud, and dream big. Soon, huge billboards went up in cities like Abuja and Port Harcourt. On them was her smiling face beside bold words. Amarachi, from slaps to stardom. People took photos in front of them, shared them online, and added captions like, "This is what power looks like." And now, whenever a woman feels like giving up, whenever she thinks she's not strong enough or worthy enough or seen enough, someone always says, "Remember Amarachi. She was once the girl who got slapped in a market. Now, she's the woman the world looks up to, not because she was perfect, but because she rose."